This is the homework helper for Chapter 6, Section 7 in the 7th grade workbook, Simple Interest. Okay, there's a couple different types of questions happening here. So we'll make sure we cover a little bit of everything here. But we got to start off and we have to recall the formula. The formula for finding interest says if we take the principal, which is the amount that's being loaned or the amount being borrowed or the amount you put into a checking account, an initial dollar amount. If you take the principal and multiply that by the rate of interest. So the extra money you're making or the extra money you're paying, depending on your situation, that's going to be a percentage. And then multiply that by the time, and that time has to be expressed in years. That's going to equal the interest. So the ideal question will be ones that give us principal, rate, and time, because if we're finding interest, all we have to do is multiply these three guys together, and that's going to be our answer. So for instance, in number 1 there, that's exactly what they're asking me to do. They're asking me to find the interest. So all I have to do is take the principal, which is $1,500, multiply that by the rate, 5%, which you know Mr. Smith is going to write as 0.05 because he's going to change it to a decimal, and then multiply that by the time, which is 3. And when we do that, the result returned is $225. So I've made $225 in interest if I put $1,500 in the bank for 3 years and the bank pays me 5% interest. So that means at the end of that term I'll have $1,725 because I'll still have the $1,500 I put in plus the $225 extra, $1,725. And you're going to do the same thing here with question number 2 because they're looking for I. And you're going to do the same thing with question 7 where they're looking for I. And the same thing with question number 8 where they're looking for I. And the same thing with 13. And that appears to be the only sets of questions here where they're looking for I. But it's going to be the same idea. Now, the one thing they're trying to mess with you here is in question number 13, they've given you the time in months. So you want to express that as part of a year. Well, 6 months is half of a year. So when you do the calculation for time in question number 15, don't put 6 in for t, put in a half, because 6 months is half of a year. Okay, so for everything else now that we haven't checked off, besides 1, 2, 7, 8, and 13, we're finding either P or R or T, and the approach is going to be similar for all of these. We might have to do a little extra step at the end depending on what we're working for, but what we want to do is we want to go ahead and plug whatever they've given us into the formula, and whatever we are finding we're going to leave as the variable. So let's take a look at question number 3. The principal here, well, we don't know the principal, so instead of me writing an amount there for the principal, I'm going to write P as a variable. I'm supposed to multiply that by the rate, which is 4%, so that's 0.04, times the time, which is 2 years, and that equals my interest, which they told us here in the beginning was $30. Well, look at that. All right, it's a little bit longer than we're used to. It's a little bit differently written than we're used to, but what we have is an equation that we need to solve. And we'll solve that equation for P, and that's how we'll get our answer. So on this left side here, I can put the 0.04 and the 2 together. And when I multiply 0.04 and 2 together, I'm just doing exactly what it says. That's 0.08. Still got our friend the variable P over there. And it equals 30. Well, now it looks like a one-step multiplication equation, which you know we're going to solve by division. That's exactly what you're going to do. Divide both sides by 0.08 now, and that'll get you P by itself, which is also then going to be your answer. 30 divided by 0.08 changes into 375. So if you've made made $30 in interest, if that money was in the bank for 2 years, and the bank paid you 4%, that means you initially put into that bank account $375. And you're going to use that same structure, that same approach when you're finding anything that's looking for P. So you're going to be using that in question number 4, and question number 9, and question number 10, and question number 14. Okay, let's try question number 6. Same idea, but this time we're looking for R. So again, we're going to go ahead and plug our numbers into the formula here. The principal, well, the principal they're telling us is $800. The next component is rate, but again, that's what we're finding, so that's going to be my variable R right now. The time in years is the next component, so I'm going to multiply that by 3. And that's going to equal my interest, which is $144. Well, look at this left side. I've got 803 I can put together. That's easy. That's 2,400. So I've got 2,400 R equals 144. And there's your equation again. That's why I said it's a lot like question number 3. So we're going to go ahead and solve that multiplication equation by dividing now. I'm going to divide by 2,400. When I do 144 divided by 2,400, the result there is 0.06. Now remember what R is though. Looking at all of the questions that you see on the screen right now, R is always presented as a percentage rate or a percentage. You've got an answer of 0.06. You have the answer as a decimal. So what you want to do to finish here is go ahead and fix that up by changing it into a percent. How do you change decimal into percent? Move the decimal 2 times to the right and add a percent sign. So R here at 0.06 really means 6%. And you'll do the same thing in answering question number 5 and 11 and 12 and 15 and 16. And notice in none of these questions are they asking me to find T, so we don't really have to worry about that, but it would be the same idea. We'd end up, if we were trying to find T, with this setup here with the variable T here, solve the equation, and that's how you would end up finding T. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at some of the story problems. Here you have 4. We're going to go ahead and take a look at questions 17 and 19. 17 says you're depositing $2,500 into an account that earns 4% simple interest. How long will it be before the total amount is $3,000? So let's label what we have here. $2,500 deposit into the account, that's the principal. Remember, the principal is always the starting amount. It earns 4% interest, so that's going to be my rate. Again, R is always a percentage. And they want to know how long before the total amount is $3,000. So what they're saying there is really, at what point in time am I going to have $3,000 in the account? Well, think about it. You started with $2,500 in the account. So in order to have gone up to $3,000, that means you had to have picked up $500 along the way. And that $500 along the way, that's interest. So to get to $3,000, that means you had to have made $500 in interest. So there's our numbers. We're finding T, obviously, because the question is very clearly asking me how long will it be. So T is going to say T. So let's plug our numbers into our formula. Again, principal, which is 2,500, times the rate, 4%, which you know I'm going to write as 0.04. That's how we change a percent to a decimal, twice to the left with the decimal and drop the percent sign. Times the time, we have no idea, so that's going to be T, equals my interest, which we've now figured out is 500. So on the left side, we're going to go ahead and put that 2,500 and the 0.04 together. That's 100. So 100 T's equals 500. Solve the equation. Well, that's, again, notice every single time here it's worked out to be a multiplication equation. That's not a coincidence. So we're going to have to solve by dividing across by 100, and we end up finding out that T is 5. Meaning it took 5 years to make that $500 in interest. Number 19, a deposit of $10,000 was made to an account the year you were born. After 12 years, the account is worth $16,600. What simple interest rate did the account earn? So we're depositing $10,000 to start. So that's the principal. After 12 years, which is what they say at the beginning of the second line here, well, that's our time, 12 years. The account is worth $16,600. Now remember, you still have the principal in there. So you still have the initial $10,000, but somehow over that 12 years, you've managed to gain an extra $6,600. So that is going to be the interest along the way. Just scratch off that one in front because, again, that $10,000 part was what we put in to start with. So I made $6,600 in interest. And they're asking us in the final line there, what interest rate did the account earn? So R, we have no idea what R is, but we'll find it. So let's dump numbers into the formula here. Principal first, 10,000, times the rate we don't know, times the time, which is 12, and it's got to equal how much money I made in interest, which is $6,600. Solve the equation. Well, we've got 10,000 and 12 being put together here. That's going to change into 120,000. And that's 120,000 R's equal to 6,600. Solve the multiplication equation by dividing. Remember, when we solve equations, we do the opposite. We spent a lot of time talking about that in Chapter 12. And when I find R here, I'm going to do 6,600 divided by 120,000. And the result there is 0.055. Well, remember, R is always shown to us as a percentage. That's what the answer is a decimal. So convert the decimal into a percentage. Move the decimal 2 times to the right and add a percent sign. And that's going to be 5.5%.